quick agenda is just we're going to talk about Indigo Studio. What is Indigo Studio? Rapid, code-free prototyping UI design tool. Targets designers and others who do UI design. Who does UI design? Developers do UI design. We do it every day. Some of us much better than others. This tool actually runs on a Windows and a Mac. And Macs. You want to know how? Yes. So our locations, you don't care about this. Australia, here we are today. David is here. Graham is here. So Indigo Studio makes it a breeze to rapidly explore UI interaction design concepts. So what makes this different than something like PowerPoint, right? Where PowerPoint you have stencils, Visio you have stencils, is that Indigo Studio has the ability for you to put your design in the context of use of when it's going to be used by the user. So I can say that this particular screen is going to be used by someone or can be used by someone on a mobile phone and an airplane. And we provide those stencils to show that context of use. We provide you the ability to storyboard your application, to actually show the flow of different screens in the application. So it's very clear to the user or the ultimate business user how this application is going to work before you actually write a single line of code. We have things like animations, we have widgets, we have all this stuff, and you'll see all this sort of come through in the demo. So why do I need Indigo Studio? We did a lot of surveys, a lot of user research, of course. We have a big interaction design team. 71% of those that we surveyed identified rework due to misunderstood design requirements as a key pain point in software development. No kidding. It's like, okay, we deployed it, and guess what? It's not what they wanted, or it's not what they expected. It's not even about deployment. It's about just that first iteration. How many times have we worked all night, all weekend, all week, and we go and show the stakeholders, and they're just like, no, that's not it. And worse yet, they get focused on something like the color of something versus the way it's laid out or the color or the way that you interact with it. So the whole point of a prototyping tool is that, hey, up front, we do some work, we do some effort, but it just can't be any prototyping tool because most prototyping tools are static. You want to be able to walk someone through the application. You want to see this application actually run. So other common pain points, tools are hard to use, slow, specs are overwhelming. I mean, you know how it is. A UX company, you hire a company, and they give you a stack of paper like this, and like, we did the work, here's what your customers want. And it's this big thing, you're like, oh my God, how am I gonna go through this? It's too much work, I don't understand it. A prototype would immediately answer those questions. But a static prototype wouldn't, because you don't know how it's supposed to actually behave. Too much cost is invested in interactive prototypes. Not only cost of doing it, but the cost of some of the software in the market today is very expensive. And it's funny, coding the prototype. I was at Adobe Max, and Disney, right? Huge company, they do all kinds of great things. And there was this user experience designer at our booth talking. They're like, yeah, we do all of our prototypes in JavaScript. So, okay, wait a minute. You're doing your prototypes in JavaScript. You know what's going to happen next, right? That's the app. Great, we're done. Let's deploy it. So too much work, too much detail. All kinds of great things have been said about this. And let's talk about the solution. So I'll just go through some quick screenshots, and then David's going to do a demo. So here's what I was talking about, capturing your solutions with storyboards. So in this case, what you do is you design screens. So this is actually a screen that you design, and we provide you with all these stencils that actually storyboard the application. So you can drag your screens onto any one of our stencils and then write notes about it and show the flow of how this would be used, or show the context of use of where it's going to be used, when it's going to be used. Maybe if it's a responsive web design, how it's going to look on different screens within that context of use. So imagine today if you can design a screen and then stick it on an iPad on an airplane, or you're at a bus stop, or you're at your desk, and you can actually show how we thought about this application being used and where it should be used. So storyboards end up being a key point and a key differentiator in what Indigo Studio offers. Sketching and designing screens. So just like you might expect as a Visual Studio, this is your design surface. You have a a set of widgets, and the difference between version 1 and 1.1 and 2 and 2.2 and 3 is not only features and functionality in the application, but it's also what we call control pack. So version 2, we're shipping an iOS control pack. So you get all the iOS widgets with all the inertia and all the touch and all that stuff built in. You can do things like change the screen size, like what is the target for this particular screen. You can change the actual device that it's supposed to be working on. So in this case, if I want to do a screen and I want to show how it's going to work on an iPad or a generic phone at a certain resolution, I can do that. So you're sitting there thinking, okay, that's cool. So I can create a screen, and then I can very quickly change what screen size is supposed to be on, and then maybe change the layout. So then I have another layout that I create in Indigo Studio, and I can clearly storyboard that to my end user. So before I say that in this responsive web design, and the phone is going to look like this, and on a tablet it's going to look like this, my user can say, yeah, that's correct, that's what I need, instead of you making those decisions yourself. Because before you write the code, it would be good to know all those details. So here's just sort of an example of an application running. Design iOS apps in no time. So I mentioned earlier, we've got all the iOS widgets. The nice thing is all these are touch friendly. They all have the inertia built in. So when you're actually designing this prototype, you're dragging widgets onto this design surface, then you run it, and it behaves exactly like you would expect the application to behave. Clutter-free UI, yeah, basic stuff. You can hide all the things, the toolbox and all these other things. We have the core set of controls, and then like I said, we have packs. So the first big pack for mobility is iOS. We actually have a user voice website, and so we rank, like we had, do you want Android next, you want iOS, do you want Windows 8? It was like overwhelming the need for iOS widgets to actually be present in the application. This is one of my favorite features of the product, is that I'm building out an application, an enterprise application, a mobile application, it doesn't matter, but they get complex. Screens have states. In different states, different things happen, different animations happen, different things appear. When I do this in like Visual Studio and I have a bunch of screens, there's no way for me to get an overview of how this actually looks, how this actually, from the zooming out, how are all these screens related. So what Indigo Studio gives you is this way to visualize every screen and then every interaction within a screen. So for example, here's my start screen. If I click one button, I go down this path. If I click another thing on the screen, I end up at this path. So based on the interaction that you define and the screens that follow those interactions, you see the workflow of this actual application from a zoomed out view, which is actually pretty useful. And you can see here, this is how you would do it. Like I want to change the screen, I want to navigate, I want to animate something on the screen. It makes it very simple to do. Animating transitions. So we have this concept of a timeline, very similar to Adobe Flash or Blend, where you're actually we're tracking what you're doing on the timeline, and those animations get added to whatever you're trying to do. So drag, resize, move, zoom, come into the screen, leave the screen, etc. And then you can tweak it. So one of the complaints from an interaction designer perspective is, okay, I'm looking at this on the screen. When I click this, I want this animation to occur. I want the screen to disappear over the next, 0.25 milliseconds or whatever it happens to be. How can I represent that? Well, I would put it in words. This will go away in 0.25 milliseconds. Okay, well that doesn't really help me because most people don't know what that means. So you want it to actually show it. So that's where animated transitions are really important in any design tool. Annotations. So of course, this can be shared through the cloud. It can be shared locally. We can send this to anyone to look at. You want them to understand maybe some things about what's happening on the screen. You can annotate all your prototypes. And in this case, sharing, we export to PDF, Word, PowerPoint, Keynote, etc. So you can take screenshots of stuff. Basically the idea is you want to give it to someone and do it quick. So with that, I'm going to invite David up. and he's going to do a quick demo. What I'll do, David, to make your life easier is I'll just open up Indigo Studio. This is an internal build, and the reason we're using an internal build is because we're adding a cool feature that I'll show you afterwards.
Okay, so I've only been using the V1, which is what's currently released. What Jason has installed on his machine today is the V2, the latest internal build of V2. So I have not seen this one, so menus may have moved around, so this will be interesting for everyone. So what I'm going to start off with is I'm going to open up 2 of the pre-canned demos that come with it when you install Indigo Studio. So I'll run through 2 of the pre-canned ones, and then I'll take you through from scratch how you could build one of these up to show you can do it in 2-3 minutes. So we've got 2 different ones here. We've got an example of a phone application, then we've got an example of an iPad application. So I'll go through the phone application first. Click. So I've loaded it up, and it's actually opened it up each of the screens, and it's brought up the little emulator, for lack of a better word. But I'll show you how you can bring that up. So here are all the screens. So here we've got the little home icon. So that's just letting you know that this is going to be the starting point of this prototype. So if I click Run, it's going to launch it up, and it's going to launch that home screen, which is this one. Now, if the users don't know what they're allowed to do, if you click on this little button that says Highlight, actually go and highlight all the points that are interactionable. Is it going to get bigger? No. So it depends what you're using your prototype for. There are some reasoning saying you should go and try to prototype out the entire app, but you're probably going to spend as much time trying to do a full prototype as you would just coding the thing. There's another school of thought which says each of your UX prototypes you should just spend 5 to 10 minutes putting one together, because the whole point is that you're just trying to throw that walkthrough to a user to get them to check out, hey, this feature, this use case, these are steps that you would do it, so they'll go click, click, click through those steps, and then you can ask the user what they thought of that so far. So if we play with this one a little bit, if we click top rated, get some little nice animations. We've got some simulated loading there. So all that is just done with transitions in the timeline. Click on Avengers, that loads up. I can click that, zooms. So you've got animations, things like that. Go back, home, directions, some more animations, box office, etc. So that's what that prototype does, and how they've done it. I'll open up the home screen. Now this is the screen here. So if I click on box office, what they've done, they've just built up this UI using a bunch of different widgets. Once they've done that, they've just gone and added interactions on some of these components. So on this button, so if you click on it, you can actually see what happens here. So at the moment we've said the interactions with this, when they tap or click on it, we do something. So in this case, if I click Edit, when the user taps or clicks on that, then we're going to go and navigate off to a second screen. Same with this one. If we click on this one, then the action is we go and navigate off to a different screen. So you can quickly just go and navigate through your prototype just by adding in interaction. So when we're building one from scratch, I'll show you how to do that.
What's on the drop down where it says second screen to navigate? The drop down, yeah, the button.
This one?
Yeah.
So the question was, what does this drop down do? So what it does is, rather than when you click on it, it just changes the screens instantly. You can add in a little screen transition. So like on Windows Phone, it's got the slide, flip, etc. So navigate from one screen to the next screen, either with just flips and things like that, just to add a bit more pizzazz to your prototype. So rather than just taps, we've also got, if I click on that again, if I add a new interaction, we've got when you hover over it, when you right click, when you hold it down, when they swipe over it, etc. So you can simulate a lot of things rather than just clicking with a mouse. You've got a lot more interactions with the user doing things with their finger. So we've got one screen that's like that. I'll open up another sample. Rove. So this one's got a lot more nice animation. So they've set up the home screen on this one for the iPad home screen. So they're simulating it. So in this case, the use case that they've got is this application is one where the user can go in and try and book a flight to somewhere. So in this case, they've mapped out one scenario that they want the user to test. So we're checking the user experience for this one. We're not checking the UI so much, we're checking the user experience of how they would go from launching the application, going searching for a flight, and then booking it. So if we click on it, we've got some animations there, animations, animations, animations. And so because we're guiding the user through each of these steps, we've just added little sticky notes here to let them know what they should be doing next. So in this case, they're setting the departure date. They click on it. We bring up a calendar control, and to guide them through the steps of what we're trying to get them doing, we're going to say, well, you're clicking on that. It's bringing up a calendar control. Next, you'd probably click on the date you're searching for. So you set up the dates. You would go and click search. So we've got more animations in here. We've got a simulated loading bar, etc., to simulate to the user. Well, probably you do that, and then you'd be waiting around while it's going off and loading up all of the search results, which again is different to just doing printing out the wireframes, handing them to the user, and say, you click on that, then it would load it up. It's very different to the real world case where you're going to click on it, and then it's actually going to take some time to load everything up. So the user would go have a look at all of the options. They'll click buy it now, and we've hooked it up so when you click that URL, click that button, it's actually going to launch a URL. So it's actually going to go and launch Travelocity. Close, minimize. So that's the point of this. So to build up this prototype would have taken, well, apart from the art graphics, the art assets, would have only taken 5 minutes to wire all of that up. But very quickly you can just spin up these prototypes, throw it at some people, check the UX. So now you get some feedback on this, and let's say, well, actually, on the, if I go all the way back, on this screen, instead of this, maybe I want a slider to select how many days I want the trip to be. So at this point, you can start that conversation with the user. Now, to go back to what Jason was saying, you can go and map out these use cases. So we've got the screens here. There's actually only 2 screens. But if we go and load this one up, we've got the storyboard here. So now you can actually go and create a storyboard for each one of your user personas. So if you've ever been to a Shane Morris talk, he's always talking about the personas and creating a persona for each one of the types of users that are using this. So you may have the that one persona for Sally who's trying to book a crazy weekend away off to Bali. You may have another one where you've got Jeff, who's a businessman who's trying to book a trip to, I was going to say Sydney, but we're in Sydney now, a trip to Melbourne to so you'd have 2 different scenarios for that. And in this case, you'd have a use case where we've got Sally, she's talking to someone over dinner, so they are trying to book this crazy weekend away. So in this case, they're just going to be in a casual environment, so she's just got it up, and they're just casually browsing and looking through and doing that. And so that's going to be different to when you've got a businessman and they're sitting down in front of their, business person, they're sitting down in front of their desktop. They're sitting down in front of their desktop and they've got some more time to do it. So you've got different scenarios there. And so you can use these storyboards to do that. And as Jason said, we do have a whole bunch of these scenes. Now under screens, we pick up all of those different transition states, etc. So we can see the beginning when the person was doing the search, when the search results were there, etc. And we've got a list of scenes. So the font's really small, but we've got one set of screens for desktop. So all the ones where we've got a picture of a desktop. So we've got a smiling man with a desktop in the office, a frowning man with a desktop, and so you'd use those scenes to just put in context where your application is at that point to help you storyboard out these things. So if we wanted to, we could go back to the home. We could create a new storyboard. Could click scenes. So let's do what Jason was saying, train. No train. Is it a plane? Okay, so search for plane. We've got a whole bunch of scenes where the person is on a plane. So here we go. We've got a frowning man. So this, so for this use case, it could be the man had to go on a last-minute business trip, so he's just jumped into the plane and he's realised, I haven't booked any accommodation yet. So he's on a plane which has free in-flight Wi-Fi, so he's frowning, going, I've got to figure out some hotels now. So then we could add a new scene. Let's see. man with a laptop. So now we can see he's now searching for it. So we can go back to screens. If we had one where this, we had hotels, we could go click and drag it onto here, and we can actually see that screen in that case. So you take you through this scenario. So you can go build all of these up and get going. Now I need my USB stick, which is in there. So that's a quick example. Oh, sorry. What I will show is those animations. So if I go back to here, open up this screen, I click on transitions and animations, we can see we've got timelines down here. So anyone that's done any sort of keyframe animations, this is how it works. So for each item, it will say at this keyframe, change it from whatever state this control is in, change it to another state. So that could be visibility, so you can make things fade out by saying at time 0, it's whatever the current state of it is. At 1 second onwards, the visibility, you're going to set it to 100% transparency. So then when you actually animate that, it's just going to go and animate the visibility from 100% down to 0%. Now I'm going to open up my USB stick. So what I thought I'd show, so a few years ago, I just did up a, can I make that bigger? There we go. A few years ago, I was working as a consultant, so I did up a, just a quick concept, a proposal for a transit application. So in Melbourne, we have Metlink Melbourne. So I just threw together a quick Windows Phone 7 concept for them to try to create a travel application for them. Now, I went into Photoshop. I spent a few days in Photoshop using templates to go and create a whole bunch of screens for this to show them a bunch of different screens in this application. And so then I started off trying to show them the workflow through the application. I had to try and do this as a static image. So I tried to show them, you've got the main pivot hub of the application where you can go and do searches, you can see the any delays, next travel times, etc. And from there, you've got transitions off to this screen, which can transition to that screen, and go here. You can pin this route onto your home screen so you can instantly access this. And that's a lot of information to try and convey in a static image. Now, if I had have had Indigo Studio, I could have done this so they can see this when I'm trying to justify what each screen is for, but then I could have actually given them a prototype that they could play around with. So again, that was all of the navigation stuff. Then I went through each screen one at a time. So they're all static, they're not getting a feel of this application. A great example of this would be searching. I had it, you could search for a route and show you all the future ones, but if you want to, you can flick it down. That's faded, so you can't see it, to show you ones which are back in history. Same thing with a specific trip. You could bring up a trip where you had to walk somewhere, catch a train, catch a bus, then after that catch a connecting tram. Now if you wanted to, you could click on the down arrow on the tram to go, and rather than one which is 8 minutes away, click, it'll show you the one which is after that, which is 28 minutes away. But that's two separate screens and doesn't really give anyone who's looking at my PowerPoint presentation the idea unless I keep flicking back and forward so you can see the times changing. Reminders, etc., etc., etc. So what I thought I'd do is I just would take that and quickly turn that into a prototype. So the idea of this could be when you're in the office and you've just got some pen and paper and you guys are just sitting down around the table and talking about how an application could work. You can just use a piece of paper, sketch out what the screens could look like, and then you quickly just use your mobile phone to just take a photo of your paper sketches, bring them into here, and then you can just paste them in. So you can just start having your sketches as interactive. So I've got all of my renders here from Photoshop. There we go. So I've got all my high resolution renders out of Photoshop. So again, this could be if you just did a whole bunch of sketches on paper, or you've got a designer who's gone and created a bunch of screens for you. They can go and hand you all of the JPEGs. So I'm just going to create a prototype out of this. So back into Indigo. new. Okay, so I'm going to start a brand new project. I'm going to create a new screen. I'm going to rename the screen to home. So we've got all of the widgets down here. So because I've got all of my images, I'm just going to add them here as if we had the whole UI. So if I scroll down to image, double click on it, add that control. I'm going to click pick image, go to my USB stick, and I'm going to bring in the home screen. Scale it right down. No, that didn't scale. That's close enough. So I've got an image, and then I can just add an interactive point to it, which would be the home tile. So I can keep on clicking widgets and dragging it on, but if you hold down Alt, click and drag for the size of something you want it to be, so you're creating a new object there, and then it prompts you to type in the name of the control that you want. So you could drag it on, you could add a checkbox, a button, password box, etc. So you can very quickly mock out UI for just alt-clicking, typing in the name of the control that you want. In this case, I'm just going to add a button. Apparently not. Escape. Whoa! Let's try that again. Yeah. Button. So we've got a big button there, but it's obscuring everything. So I'm just going to crank the transparency all the way down. So it's just an invisible interactive point. I'm going to add an interaction. So when they click on this, we're going to navigate to another screen. So in this case, we're going to go to, whoops, when they click this button, we're going to navigate to a screen in the project. We're going to create a new screen, which is going to be the panorama. Create. There we go. So we're going to do the same thing. Add an image, pick the image. This time we're going to use the panorama. Sorry, the surface that I'm, the flat piece of thing that I've got my mouse on is tiny. It's only about 10 centimeters wide, so I can't move my mouse around. Scale it right down. There we go. So when they launch it, we're going to go here. So then, so what I'm simulating here is we're going to try and search for a trip. Then I'm going to bring up the search results. They can click on a search result to bring up that trip. So in this case, I could put in a bunch of text boxes here to simulate them typing in where they currently are and where they're trying to go to. But for this, we're just going to cheat and say when they click on search, we're just going to show them the results, just because I haven't mocked up anything else. So we'll add another button here. We'll set the transparency to nothing. Add an interaction. Navigate to a new screen, which is going to be search results. Add in the next image. Image 3. There we go. We have all the search results. Okay, search results, so we'll tell the user who was actually interacting with this that they click on the third result. Button, this is my last transition to a new screen. Add an interaction, navigate, new screen, which is going to be trip details. Create. Last image. Is going to be the trip details. Make it a bit bigger. Okay, so at the moment, yeah, you may not be able to see because the seat's so small up here. It says 8 minutes remaining. So what I want to have now is when I click down, I want to go to the other image, which was the next tram, which said 24 minutes. So what I can do is I can add a button. So holding Alt, dragging over the down button, transparency to nothing. Now when they click this, the interaction this time, instead of navigating somewhere else, we want to change the screen to a new state. So I'm going to change this to a new state. Okay, so now it's recording what we're doing. So if I click on this image, I click pick image, and I'm going to pick a different one, 4.2. Down the bottom here, it's actually been recording everything that I've done. So it's recorded that we've gone and set the image. So I could go and drag it so it takes a longer time to do it, but no, I'm just going to make it so it's instant. And while I'm at it, I might as well add a button, Alt, drag here, add another button, so when they click the up, we go back to the previous time. So add an interaction, change the screen to an existing state, which is going to be that first screen again. So that's it. I've taken all of the mock-ups which someone's done for me and made it now so it's interactive, so we can show the user how it would be if they have to interact through this, which gives them a lot more context now. So if I go to here, click on run, it's going to launch up. So we've got our app, we can click on it, it's gone, loaded it up. So the user would launch the application, they go do their search, go into here, they've brought up the trip details, we hit down, it's changed to 28 minutes, back up, it's gone back to that one, so they can see what it would look like if they're trying to navigate to different, see what's in the future. And then we can wire it up, so if we hit the back button, it would actually go back to the other screen. So we could do all of that, and that only took a few minutes to do. What it automatically does behind the scenes, if we click on this, it'll show you all the navigation points throughout the application. So where I, in my PowerPoint presentation, had to actually go and actually up. There you go, I had to create that myself in Photoshop. It automatically generates it for us. And if I go back to the Find Flicks, home, and click on that, this gives a better idea. You can see from the main home screen, you can go off to a number of different sections in the application. And then if you click on a movie either in box office or in top rated, both of them will navigate you off to that screen. And again, that just happens automatically.
Wow.
I'm kind of done.
Yeah, that's awesome. So I'm going to show one last thing.
Please.
Does anyone have any questions?
Can we use the mic? So I'm fine that now I'm get the prototype done. So would I be able to convert that into HTML5? How can I use that for development?
Oh, that's a great question. That was a great question. We'll answer it in 1 second. So the reason this is a developer build, internal build, is because that's what we're working on. So we're working on you being able to take this and
Oh, I forgot to show this actually running in HTML on my phone. Actually, so
oh yeah, share a prototype.
So what I forgot to show was we can actually go and export this out. So I showed it running locally on my designer machine instead of a dev machine, my design machine. But what we can actually do, if we hit share prototype, we can go and share it on the Infragistic servers. You can share it on your own server also, so just spit it out into a folder, so you can just go and host it somewhere on your intranet if you want. But what I did was, while Jason was doing his last talk, I sat down on my Surface. I did the exact same demo that I just did, but I clicked share, and my phone's gone flat. So I did do it, and so then it exported out to HTML5 prototype. And so you can actually go and give your HTML5 prototype out to all of your users, so they can pick up the iPads, pick up their mobile phones.
Yeah, I'm not on the internet, that's why.
Yeah, because you were tethered to my phone, which sucked it dry. Sucked it dry. So you can pick up the iPad and start playing with it. So you can give the user your prototype in context. So here's our prototype of a mobile phone app running in your mobile phone's browser. So you can hand them that, give another person the iPad version so they can test it in context.
Yeah, so the idea is when we do that, what we're doing is we're taking the entire application, all of the transitions, all the different screens, and we're creating this big old JavaScript file. And then we're giving you a link. And so you actually have the running application on any device. But that's not usable code. It's just this big old JavaScript file And we do a lot of stuff to actually make that happen. So if I go to, let me do a new project screen. Let me just see how this will work with a couple things. I'm just going to drag a button here. Let me drag a something a little bit richer. List box, maybe. There's a list box. Whoops, add item. And let's add a table. So there's a table. And let me see if we have, there's a tree view in here somewhere, I think. Good point. So let's do a tree. So here's my tree view. Let's make that a little bit bigger. So now this is an application I've designed. My users love it. They're ready to go. I'm going to go ahead and run my screen. And so this little button here where it says export, this is all prototype. We haven't quite, we're probably a couple months away from shipping this. But what our goal is that on a running state, you'll be able to take that state and get usable JavaScript HTML code out of it. So it's not a big JavaScript file. The CSS will be separate. And then eventually what we want to do is allow you just to, with your mouse, select a piece of the running prototype and maybe just get the CSS for that. Maybe just get that one JavaScript widget on the page because that's what you want to use. So in this case, if I click export, I end up with some code. So let me copy this. And whoops, let me stick this in. So here what we have is the body input type equals button. We have a div grid 0 class equals default grid. This is a jQuery, could be a jQuery unordered list using a tree view. So you bind this to a jQuery tree or an Infragistics tree, and then it's a tree view. So where we're going with this is ultimately the ability for you to take pages, generate real usable code, and in fact, in this case, it is the table that we generated was an Infragistics grid. That's the IG grid, and there's the data source. So this is actually using jQuery, and it's the IG tree. So I'm going to bind the IG tree to this unordered list, and I'm going to get a tree view. And let's run this guy and see what happens. Run this guy in Chrome.
Save the file.
Oh. Save as. Thank you. And so here we have a tree view. Oops, we'll allow block content. Well, it didn't quite. Oh, you know why? Because look here. Well, I'm not on the internet. Dang. So here's the CDN. So that's the CDN to get the jQuery and the Infragistics code. But anyway, November, December of this year, any prototype you create, you'll be able to generate usable JavaScript with real widgets, not just junk. It's not a two-way thing. It's just to help you get started. We're looking at it as kickstarting a project, kickstarting an application. We're looking at it as, you know, if you're not used to using jQuery or Infragistics controls, you have designs that you want to mock up really quick and get real JavaScript out that can help you get to that next step. And then we'll improve it over time. So this is like very early thinking, very V1 preview-ish. But this is the direction that we're going to take a piece of this product. So it makes it even more interesting for developers versus just being like a prototyping tool. So great question. Question from the back? Oh, Mike?
You know, I think you're trying to actually solve the wrong problem. This might be nice for simple solutions where the user has a very good idea, but when they don't, You actually need to go back to the business object model and then try and work out what the functions are in the model that you're going to use for the UI. So then you bind the UI to those worked storyboarded functions and objects that the user has. So this is great. I mean, I can see where this is like your first step at how would you do this, but actually down the track is what you need a system. This is what my PhD is about, is actually building systems like that where the business actually works out what the objects are together. We work together and work out what the methods and the objects are, and then we go to the UI later. You see?
Yes. There's all kinds of ways to do it. There's all kinds of ways to skin a cat. And like, we're not trying to solve the world's problems with this. And I don't know if we're ever going to get there, and I don't know if we need to. Because once you're there, you're at this point of no return of a code generator that, you know, has this really rich, complex models and analysis, and we may get there. But you're right, there's different levels of work we could do here. And initially, the whole reason that we think about this is that, okay, I've got screens and they've been approved, and now what is the logical next step? So right now we're doing HTML5, we've prototyped iOS, we actually have a native iOS viewer as well. So it's sort of like, you know, helping a developer just, you know, and a hardcore dev's going to say, all right, you know, I might use 10% of what you're going to give me, or I might not use any of it, but at least it's there.
But it's not domain-driven design, where you're actually learning the business together. That's the problem. You're sort of giving the users what they think they want. And
yeah.
Oh yeah, but you haven't actually worked out what the real problems are and what's the best way of showing it. You know.
Well, no, you have worked that out.
Well, no, you've worked out what they think that they want, but no.
That's the whole point of the tool.
Yeah, but that's the point. You haven't actually worked out what the deeper level what the problem was, and so then you could actually factor in a better.
No,
UI.
you have. That's the whole point of user-centered design. The whole point is that you have figured that out.
No, but we all know that with domain-driven design, you actually get a ubiquitous language where we can all talk. And what the language you've given them is screens and click buttons. You haven't given them any.
No, I get what you're saying.
High concept.
Yeah.
So, and that's what my PhD is about. It's trying to get that to a higher level, and so then the UI is actually just another generated layer, dynamically. There will be no static code generated at all.
Yeah, we'll talk about it over some beer. And I'll get some of our interaction designers in the conversation, see where it goes. But anyway, I wanted to share this with you guys. I think it's cool. David gave a little example. We have one last question from Greg. He's in the 15th row. Please try to talk up.
Right, okay. Thank you. Yeah, look, simple question. You're producing a UI that looks like a UI. I just want to show something that looks like it's out of SketchFlow, i.e. a sketch to my user. Can you provide that sort of UI to my user?
Why do you want that?
Because I want to give people the impression that it's not complete. I want to have the impression.
They'll have that impression because there'll be no colors. No, we do not want to do that. We are not going to do that ever. Yeah, we're not. I mean, because the whole point is you can go from a low fidelity to a high fidelity prototype with this tool. So I can have a low fidelity prototype that looks like this, and then I could actually get up to high fidelity with you know, a little bit more effort. So like FineFlix, for example, that took, I think, 3 days to build that. There was some artwork, there was some other things. It took a few days, but actually I have a complete running application of everything in 3 days, meaning, you know, working with people and all that. So how long is it going to write that app? Maybe 2 weeks. I don't know, but at least I know exactly what I'm supposed to do because I actually have something that maybe went from low to high. And as a matter of fact, you know what? Do we have in samples?
You have the internet now, by the way.
Oh, okay, but you know what? Do we still have in one of these projects? We don't. In V1, which you'll download today, we actually have the low fidelity artwork in the sample. So like where David said it was literally just back of the napkin sketches, that's what we use for that, and then you incrementally add the high fidelity on top of it. So it's just a choice we made to move forward with the tool. All right, and we are done for this presentation. I want to thank everyone, and cut.
Did you get all that? We'll take the SSW TV quiz and test your knowledge now.